Okay, so I don't know if anything screams rookie like sitting on your bed to record your video, but here it is. I'm the music rookie and I do what I want. So, I'm just going to talk to you about three things that I think will help you get started with music production. So, the first thing is super obvious, but my number one suggestion is when you're getting started with music, get yourself a notebook. Get yourself a little notebook that you can take with you places. And I actually have one that's even smaller than this that I keep in my purse, and I can write little notes in it. And I use that for a couple of things. Well, I use this one for a couple of things, and I use that one for a couple of things. That one's like my travel notebook. I write notes in it, and then I hurry and transcribe them into this one when I get home. So this notebook stays by my bedside for the most part, or wherever I'm doing my writing in the house that day, but it stays where I know where it is and I can find it. And I write down ideas that I have. Sometimes they come to me always as I'm falling asleep or trying to do something important, it seems like. Um, but I can pick it up and I write down thoughts I have that I think might make for interesting song ideas or song titles. I think of things that have interesting sounds. So if I have a thought in my head and the words have like a cool rhythm or an interesting sound or they just sound pretty together, I'll write them down in my notebook. And sometimes those things will be several lines, and sometimes it's just one or two words. And sometimes I'll write like a paragraph just about a feeling I'm having or something. Keep that there. Another thing I do with my notebook, the one that I take around with me, is if I see something that's really pretty or interesting, or I read an interesting sign, or I witness people doing something cool, or I hear a really cool line of dialogue, like someone says something, and I'm like, man, that is cool. I write that down as well. So I collect material from all around me, and this is a strategy that I think most writers are probably using, and it's definitely one I was taught in my creative writing classes in college. I've definitely heard a lot of songwriters and musicians talk about it, and authors. It's just a good strategy because it helps us bring the tangible details of the real world into our writing, which makes it more believable and relatable to our consumers, our readers, our listeners. Um, so that's why I do that. The last thing I do with this is when I am trying to learn stuff about music, if I'm talking to a really talented musician who is giving me advice, if I'm watching YouTube videos, or even if I'm reading articles, I keep this with me and I take notes on what I'm learning. And that has been super helpful too. I go back and read them sometimes, but even just the process of writing it down in an organized way helps me to remember the things that I'm learning about music and helps me to record those ideas to come back to them later if I want. So that's my first suggestion. My next suggestion is probably what many of you do instead of a notebook, a smartphone, right? You have your smartphone and you can use that to record ideas as well. You can type those things into your smartphone, you can text them to yourself, you can put them in a notes app, you can email them to yourself. You can use a voice recorder, and that I recommend that you do. If you are going to use a notebook for recording lyrics and notes and ideas, that's great. But you still probably want to use a smartphone or a voice recorder to record melody ideas, cool sounds that you hear. Um, like sometimes, this sounds really weird. I don't know that I've even done this, but you'll hear like a rhythm from the washing machine in your house or from the way the um, tree, there we go, branches, the branches hit your window, and you can record that sound to come back to later, and it might be inspiration for a song. I've never done that. It's just something I thought about because I do hear those things and notice them throughout the day, but I've never tried to make them part of my tools, part of my materials to draw from. But at the very least, have something that you can record your voice on in case you come up with an idea and you can keep it and not lose it. Now that I'm getting into music production, I've always known that Apple products were nice products. I just felt I didn't need to spend that kind of money on them. If you're going to get into music, writing, production, any of that, editing, all of that, go with Apple. They're pretty much the top of the market unless you want to spend even more on like custom made devices for music. But even then, I mean, Apple's going to do the job. So if you're getting something new, go for Apple. My third suggestion is really, it's only relevant if you have a laptop that already has decent specs. Meaning, do you have, okay, I'm going to tell you the minimum, and I'm going to tell you that telling you that minimum means you're really not ready for it, but you can probably get by. You need a laptop with, at the very least, 8 gigabytes of memory, 256 gigabytes of storage space, and a dual core processor. And that's really, I know people who make it work and it's okay, but those specs are just, they're not going to last you very long. I think they'll get you started if you learn how to use everything at exactly the right levels. But it's going to be harder to make it work, and it's not going to work for you for very long. And you'll definitely almost right away want an audio interface. But if you have a computer with decent specs, and I would recommend as my bare minimum 16 gigabytes of RAM, memory, 500 gigabytes of storage space at least, and a quad core processor. And that's the minimum, really. The MacBook Pro is a great computer. It's super expensive, I know, but well, it's not super expensive for a nice computer. But it's more than some people want to spend, but if you're getting into this stuff, you're going to eventually want to spend the money. This is a MIDI keyboard, and this one right here is about the cheapest one on the market. This is an AKM 320 by MIDI Plus, and I believe it cost me about 30 bucks. And then I had to spend a few more dollars because most of them come with a broken cord. You have to plug this into your computer with a USB to, I think this is it, I can't remember what this is called, maybe a USB-B. Camera cords often have them, but there's a special cord for MIDI devices, and it's that cord. The cord that comes with this is oftentimes broken. So I plugged it into my computer saw the device was plugged in, but it couldn't do anything with it. And I thought there was a problem with the device or a problem with Windows, and it turns out that there was just a problem with the cord. And so I ordered a new one. It took me like a month to figure this out. I was on the phone with the company and with Windows, and neither of them were very helpful. Of course, none of us suspected that the cord that seemed to be plugging into the computer just fine and pulling up the device was the problem with why the device wasn't actually working. Maybe it would be worth it to spend the extra 10 bucks on a slightly nicer one. But this actually, for as cheap as it was, I've written entire songs on it before. And I prefer my nice big one, but this does the job, and especially if I'm just trying to sit and chill and kind of want to play around, it's great. So what this does is you can plug it into your computer, and you have to have a DAW, a digital audio workstation, or I'm going to show you an alternative, and that'll be in my next video. A really cheap, really easy alternative, and it's also a great thing to get you started with music. But what it will do is it will take these note inputs, when you click them, the MIDI input. So a MIDI is just a signal, and it sends it to your computer, and there's no audio actually associated with it. But then you have a digital audio workstation or a program that translates that MIDI signal into music. Those are my 3 suggestions for equipment you need to get started writing music. Or obviously, if you already have an instrument like a guitar or a piano or a flute or a trumpet, whatever, a saxophone, start working with that. There you go. There's 3 suggestions for getting into music. It's going to cost you a total of like 30 bucks if you've already got a decent computer. If not, then it's going to be more expensive, or maybe you just want to take another route. Hopefully this is helpful to you. Good luck, and start writing. Start writing things down in your little notebooks.